Hi, I'm Skylar. The night my husband won $19 million, I thought we'd finally breathe easy. Instead, his family handed me a trash bag and said, "You're no longer needed." By morning, he filed for divorce. Just like that. I went from wife to nobody. No home, no name on anything. Just silence and a locked door. But they forgot one thing. I had nothing left to lose. And sometimes, that's when a woman becomes most dangerous. Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this? And where from? Drop it in the comments, because what happened next left him on his knees, begging me for help. Would you have forgiven them? They say the air changes when your life does. That night, it didn't just shift. It turned thick, like it knew something I didn't. The dining room at Edna's house was glowing under a tacky chandelier shaped like deer antlers, a leftover from her late husband's hunting phase. We were there for what was supposed to be a regular Friday dinner with Clinton's family. Roasted chicken, boxed wine, his sister Jenna passing judgment with her eyes as always. Then the television in the corner, usually playing some true crime rerun, blared with a lottery announcement. Clinton had bought the ticket on a whim the week before at a corner gas station. I'd been with him, joking that if we won, I'd finally get that pottery studio he always called my little fantasy. We laughed about it. I never thought we'd win. But we did. $19 million. Clinton jumped up, his face frozen for a second before erupting into a loud, half-drunken cheer. Everyone else screamed, clapped, popped champagne that Edna just happened to have chilling. I was still in my chair, smiling awkwardly, heart pounding. When Clinton stood to toast, he held his glass up and said, "To the people who always believed in me, family who never gave up on me." He didn't even glance at me, not once. I felt it in my chest like a stone, the kind you can't cough up or swallow down. When I turned to Edna, hoping for something, some acknowledgement, she leaned close with a tight smile and whispered, "Some people just aren't built for wealth, dear." I laughed. What else could I do? I laughed like I didn't hear the venom under her breath. But inside, something split, like clay cracking in a kiln. After the party, Clinton and I drove home in silence. The windshield wipers swiped rhythmically, clearing drizzle that seemed to come from nowhere. I stared out the window, rehearsing how to say, "I'm happy for us," but it never came out. At home, I kicked off my heels, cradling the base of my feet. They ached. Clinton moved around the bedroom without looking at me, peeling off his blazer, checking his phone. I tried to bridge the quiet. "So, what happens now?" He paused, still not facing me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, our life. I was thinking maybe this could be our fresh start. Maybe even revisit the whole baby thing, or at least—" He exhaled, sharp and fast. "Skylar, I think we need to talk about separating things." I blinked, half laughing. "Like, separating chores? What are you talking about?" He turned finally. His eyes were glassy, not from drink, but from something colder. "I met with the family attorney this afternoon. I want to keep things clean. This is a good time before it all gets complicated." My stomach dropped. "You... what?" My voice cracked on the second word. "It's better this way. No mess, no fights, I'll be fair." "Fair?" I said, barely audible. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees. "Look, we were already drifting. This just gave me clarity." Drifting? I'd been right there beside him, every late bill, every job rejection, every Thanksgiving where his family pretended I didn't exist. Now suddenly we were drifting? I tried calling his name, but it caught in my throat. He didn't answer, didn't touch me, didn't look sorry. That night I couldn't sleep. I moved around the house like a ghost, not sure what I was looking for. Maybe something to hold on to, maybe just a lie I could still believe in. Around midnight, I walked outside to breathe, and that's when I saw them. My clothes, my shoes, my handmade planner, stuffed into garbage bags, lined neatly on the porch like trash day had come early. A lump clogged my throat. I stared at the bags for several seconds, hoping this was some sick misunderstanding. Then the front door creaked. Jenna stood there, arms folded, leaning against the frame like she owned the house. She smirked. Nothing personal. It's just business. You're not family anymore. I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't have words, but because there were too many. And none would fix this. I tried calling my parents 3 times, straight to voicemail. The sky opened up just then, soft at first, then heavier. I didn't move. I didn't run for cover. I just stood there barefoot, my sundress sticking to my legs, the rain mixing with tears I didn't remember letting fall. Inside, I could make out Clinton's shadow, his silhouette behind the frosted glass window. He looked for a second, just long enough to remind me he was choosing this. Then the lights turned off. I bent down, reached into one of the bags, and pulled out the only thing that didn't smell like betrayal, an old clay wind chime I'd made for our first anniversary. I had carved his initials into it with a wooden needle. He'd never hung it, said it didn't match the house. Well, it was mine now. With the rain sliding down my back, I stepped off the porch. My shoes were gone, my phone dying, and my chest hollow, but somehow I kept walking. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. I walked for over an hour, soaked through, numb. And when I saw the flickering sign of a gas station in the distance, I aimed for it like a shipwrecked fool swimming toward something, anything. I pushed the door open, hands trembling. The clerk looked up from behind the counter, chewing on a pen cap. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my damp wallet. My ID was inside, barely legible from the rain. I placed it on the counter with both hands. I couldn't hold it steady. "Ma'am," the clerk said gently, "you okay?" No, but I nodded anyway. The air inside the gas station smelled like burnt coffee and old mop water. I didn't even flinch when the chime above the door rang behind me. I must have looked like something out of a sad movie, hair dripping, jacket clinging to my arms, my hands trembling as I placed my ID on the counter. The clerk, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a Cubs cap, raised his brows. He didn't say anything at first, just stared like he couldn't decide if I was trouble or tragedy. "You all right, ma'am?" he finally asked, his voice rough with the weight of too many night shifts. I nodded. A lie. "Just need to charge my phone." I sounded like gravel, tired, cold, broken. He reached behind the counter and handed me an old charger, pointing toward a faded plastic chair near the microwave burritos. I plugged in my phone and stared at the screen. Dead. "Coffee?" he asked, holding up a small styrofoam cup. I hesitated. He set it down beside me anyway. "On the house." I nodded again. "Thanks." My fingers barely curled around the cup. I watched the slow climb of the battery icon on the screen like it was my lifeline. 30 minutes passed, maybe more. I tried calling Clinton, straight to voicemail. I dialed my sister, then my mother, then my best friend from college. Voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. Only one name left that didn't carry judgment or history. Leah. I hit call. She picked up on the 4th ring. Her voice was groggy. "Hello? Lee, it's Skylar." A pause. "Skylar, are you okay?" "Not really." I tried to laugh but choked instead. "I need somewhere to sleep just for tonight." Another pause. Then a soft, careful, "What happened?" "I don't want to talk about it. Just, can I come over?" A sigh. "Yeah, sure, but just tonight, okay?" "Of course, just tonight." It took me 20 minutes to walk to her apartment. The cold sank deeper with every step, and by the time I knocked on her door, my bones felt brittle. Leah opened the door in sweatpants and a hoodie, her hair pulled back, eyes filled with the kind of concern people reserve for strangers who used to be friends. "Wow," she whispered, "you look like you've been through it." I gave a half smile. That's one way to put it. She handed me a towel and pointed to the bathroom. "There's clean clothes in the closet. You're welcome to crash on the couch." "Thank you." In the bathroom, I peeled off my soaked clothes and slipped into a pair of faded sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt. The warmth felt foreign, like something I didn't quite deserve. When I came back out, Leah was in the kitchen whispering to someone on the phone. Her voice low, rushed. "I don't know, babe. She just showed up. Yeah, it's weird. She didn't even explain what happened, just said she needed a place. I think she got dumped or something. I stopped in the hallway, every word seeping through me. She used to have it all, you know. The house, the perfect marriage. Now she's crashing on our couch like... I stepped out. Leah turned quickly, startled. Hey, you okay? I forced a smile. Yeah, just... tired. She nodded awkwardly. Of course. Couch is all yours. I lay down, pulling the blanket up to my chin, staring at the popcorn ceiling. Everything I'd built, every hour, every sacrifice, felt like it had been wiped out in a single swipe. When Clinton was working nights to get his IT certifications, I made him dinner. I massaged his shoulders while he studied. I answered emails for him. I did it because I believed in us. In him. And none of that mattered now. Not the anniversary trips I planned, not the savings I dipped into when his paychecks were short, not the time I told my own family we were just fine when we weren't. I wasn't just written out. I was erased. I woke to the sound of movement in the kitchen. The sun peeked in through the blinds. Leah was making coffee, avoiding my gaze. I got up and made my way to the bathroom. My head still ached from the night before. No toothbrush. I wet my finger, squeezed a drop of soap, and brushed. The taste was bitter and humbling. Leah knocked lightly. Someone just dropped this off for you. I opened the door, and she handed me a white envelope. Said it was urgent. It had my name written in blue ink, no return address. Inside was a folded document. I unfolded it slowly, expecting a bill, maybe a note. But it wasn't either. It was a court summons. Filed for divorce. Filed the day before the lottery win. My knees buckled, and I gripped the sink. The paper fluttered to the floor like a cruel joke. He planned this. All of it. The party, the smiles, the sudden coldness. I was never part of the dream. I was just a liability. And he'd cut me out. Clean, calculated, and quiet. He didn't even have the decency to wait a day. The worst part wasn't that he left. It was that it had all been decided before I even knew I had something to lose. I looked out the window at the skyline. The city buzzed like it always did. Cars humming, life moving forward without me. I picked up the paper from the floor and held it tight, and I whispered, not to Leah, not to the walls, but to myself. They forgot who they married. By the time the sun dipped beneath the skyline, turning the courthouse windows gold, my hands had stopped shaking. But my heart hadn't. Not really. I didn't head back to Leah's just yet. Something in me itched. Some part of me needed facts, not just feelings. So instead of walking home, I crossed the street and pushed through the glass doors of the county courthouse. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of carpet glue and old paper. I waited in line behind a man arguing about a parking ticket and a woman trying to change her name on a birth certificate. Then it was my turn. The clerk was middle-aged, her hair piled into a tired bun. She looked up at me over the top of her glasses and gave a half-smile that faded quickly when she saw my face. I need to check on a divorce filing, I said, keeping my voice steady. She nodded. Names? Clinton R. Maddox and Skylar Maddox. She typed quickly. The keys clacked like a metronome against my chest. She tilted her head, then turned the screen slightly so I couldn't see it. Yes, filed 2 days ago. Her voice softened. Under irreconcilable differences. That part didn't hurt, I expected that, but then she hesitated. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. There's an attachment. She reached into a filing cabinet and handed me a copy. I stared at the paper. It was a waiver, a statement that said I, Skylar Maddox, willingly gave up any claim to Clinton's assets, including any and all potential future winnings. There, at the bottom, was a signature, my name, in ink, neat, almost perfect, but it wasn't mine. I blinked, once, twice. My stomach flipped. He submitted this with the petition? I asked. The clerk nodded. It's in the system. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. He didn't want to share the winnings. He planned it. I folded the paper in half and slipped it into my purse like it was something radioactive. I walked outside, the sky now streaked with lavender and burnt orange. I didn't cry, but I felt something press against my throat. A quiet, invisible hand. I didn't go far, just a block away to a diner with buzzing neon and cracked vinyl booths. I ordered black coffee and asked the waitress if I could borrow their outlet. She nodded and kept her distance. Leah's old laptop was slow, the kind of slow that made you grateful just to get one tab open. But eventually, I pulled up Facebook. I wasn't expecting to see anything, but I searched Clinton's sister, Devon. She'd posted a photo just a few hours ago. It was her and their mother, arms raised, champagne in hand. The caption read, "Mom always said, when we get money, we get rid of dead weight. So grateful for this next chapter." Freedom, where manifestation works. Dead weight. I blinked at those words like they might rearrange themselves, but they didn't. I scrolled further. Months back. A photo I hadn't noticed when she posted it, buried under a dozen yoga poses and smoothie bowls. It was of a retreat, one of those weekend manifesting workshops they all went to before Clinton's big win. In the background of the photo, on a whiteboard, 3 chilling words, "Win plan," and beneath that, "Separation investment shift, consolidate asset control." I leaned back. For a moment I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just about Clinton, this was the family. They'd planned for the money, before the lottery win, before the divorce, before I ever knew anything was wrong. They sat in some cabin in the woods and wrote my erasure down like a strategy. They were never planning to include me in their future. They were planning to remove me. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. I left the diner, walked 3 blocks in a daze, and ended up sitting on a bench outside a CVS. The streetlights flickered on, one by one. I pulled out my phone, not dead anymore, thanks to the charger the gas station clerk had loaned me. There was only one person I could call who wouldn't start the conversation with, "I told you so." Myrna. She'd been my accountant when I was freelancing, back before Clinton insisted we simplify everything into his firm's system. She always said, "You may love your man, but keep a ledger, just in case love forgets." The phone rang once, twice. Then her voice. Familiar, warm, cautious. "Skylar?" I swallowed hard. "Do you remember helping me set up that emergency savings? The one Clinton didn't know about?" Silence. Then a soft inhale. "Under your maiden name?" "Yeah, I remember. Haven't thought about that in a while." My grip tightened. "Is it still active?" "Hold on." The sound of her typing came through the phone. Then a pause. "Yep, still there. Balance hasn't changed. It's quiet, but it's yours." I closed my eyes. I wasn't penniless, not completely. There was something left, something I had created before him, for me. "Thank you, Myrna." "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said, honestly, "but I will be." I ended the call. The street around me was quiet now, late, cold. I walked back toward Leia's building with purpose I hadn't felt since this whole thing began. I didn't cry that night. I started a spreadsheet. By the time the sun crept through the blinds the next morning, my coffee had gone cold, and I had over a dozen tabs open. Bank logins, courthouse databases, reverse phone lookup tools, and one open note titled simply, "Receipts." If they wanted to erase me, they should have been more thorough. The first call I made was to the county records office. I used my maiden name, the one they always acted like was some badge of shame too ethnic for their taste, and requested a formal transcript of the divorce filing. The clerk was polite, a woman named Denise, who had probably seen her share of people unraveling over the phone. "Just verifying," she said gently. "Skylar Varnon, correct? There was a divorce filing submitted under Clinton v. Carter 2 days ago. Irreconcilable differences marked as cause." I exhaled through my nose. "And any documents attached?" I heard her clicking. "Yes, there's a waiver filed. Property division agreement and—" She paused. "A notarized statement says you waive claim to any earnings or winnings. Says you signed it back in May." My voice cracked slightly. "Can you tell me who notarized it?" Another pause. Kellen Carter, Clinton's cousin. I remembered him from 2 barbecues, one where he called me trophy-ish to my face. Is his license number listed? Denise hesitated. Ma'am, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but his license shows as inactive, suspended 6 months ago. I wrote that down in all caps. This wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. I didn't lash out. Not yet. Instead, I thanked her, hung up, and added a new tab in my spreadsheet. Invalid notary, legal leverage. They thought I'd scream and beg. I preferred documentation. After a quick shower and a slice of dry toast, I borrowed Leia's laptop again and headed to the small real estate office where Clinton's former co-worker, Ailey, now worked. I didn't call ahead. I needed honesty, not rehearsed lines. It was a modest building off an aging commercial strip, the kind of place that smelled faintly of coffee and printed paper. Ailey looked up from her desk, surprised, and then quickly stood. Skylar? Oh my gosh, I didn't expect— I just need a few minutes, I said softly. Off the record. She nodded and led me to a side room. There were no handshakes, no fake pleasantries, just 2 women who used to sit around folding chairs during flag football games, pretending we belonged in their world. I remember, she said after a moment. Clint used to joke that when the money came in, you'd be handled quietly. I thought he was being dramatic. But then— Ailey, I interrupted, I need to know where the money went, the lottery money. She hesitated, then reached for her phone. Back when I handled some of the transfer forms, they were routing a portion to a Florida account. In Delia's name. His mother. My stomach turned. He moved it before I even saw the paperwork? Yeah, he said— She swallowed. He said they needed a clean slate, and that you were a complication, that the family needed to consolidate assets before your name got tangled in legal rights. That line, that word, complication. They'd moved fast, ruthless, efficient. I jotted down every detail she could give, account names, routing banks, dates of transfer, even the fact that the family had visited an estate agent in Miami. I wasn't just chasing a husband anymore. I was chasing a conspiracy. As dusk settled, I found myself parked down the block from Delia's house. It used to smell like cinnamon and mothballs, a scent I had once grown strangely fond of. Now, it just smelled like cardboard and lies. 2 movers hauled a velvet chaise out to the truck. One of them dropped it, cursed, and kept going. I watched, arms crossed, as Delia stood on her porch in a crisp white linen dress, sipping iced tea like she hadn't just been part of a legal ambush. I could still hear her voice from that Thanksgiving. We need someone clean in our family now, someone who fits the future. I didn't knock. I didn't march up the driveway and demand an apology. Instead, I clicked a photo of the moving van, got the license plate, wrote it all down. They were relocating their empire, 1 dining chair and silk pillow at a time, and I was tracking every piece of it. Back at Leia's that night, I lit a candle, stared at the spreadsheet, and took a deep breath. My hands didn't shake anymore. I wasn't afraid. They had underestimated me because I loved quietly. Now I'd fight the same way. And that night, I emailed the IRS. That night, after I sent the email to the IRS, I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of cold tea and a notepad full of arrows, check marks, and names underlined twice. My phone buzzed around 4:17 a.m., a notification that my message had been received by the fraud division. That was something. Not justice, not yet. But something. I was about to go refill my tea when the phone rang. It wasn't a number I recognized at first, out-of-state area code, but something about the first few digits stirred a strange ache in me. I answered without thinking. Hello? There was a pause, a breath. Then a voice I hadn't heard since I was 10 years old. Skylar. My heart thudded once, then froze. Dad? I saw your name, he said, in the real estate filings, the sale in Charleston. It came across my desk. He hesitated. I know what they did to you. It's what they did to me. I stood up slowly, bracing my hand against the counter. "What are you talking about?" "They erased me," he said, quieter now. 30 years ago, your mother's brothers. They used a man named Merrill Clinton. He was a young attorney back then. Said I'd stolen money from the family trust. They had documents, signatures. None of it was mine. I closed my eyes. Clinton, the same last name as my ex-husband. I asked, "You're telling me my husband's family, Clinton's, was involved in framing you back then?" "Same firm, same tricks. I looked into it once before I left. That whole family's been in the business of making inconvenient people disappear for decades." He didn't cry. Neither did I. "Why now?" I asked him, unsure whether to whisper or scream. "Why come back now?" "Because I saw what they're trying to do to you," he said. "And I never stopped being your father, Skylar, not for 1 second." I didn't respond. Not yet. The silence said everything I couldn't. Later that morning, I sat in my car for 15 minutes outside a storage facility Clinton and I used to rent back in grad school. I hadn't been there in years. I almost didn't renew the lease after we separated, but something in me had said to keep it, just in case. The unit was small, barely wide enough to hold the desk we'd shared once, a few sealed banker boxes, and a filing cabinet he'd insisted on keeping even though we both worked off laptops. I pulled on gloves. The dust smelled like old books and unspoken memories. In the back, behind a tarp and a cracked laundry basket, I found a fireproof folder marked in my handwriting. Skylar, copies. Inside I found gold. Our original marriage agreement. Unsigned by a witness. Business formation paperwork with my name clearly listed as co-founder and co-signer. Receipts. Dozens of them. Tuition payments I'd made for his law school. Computer purchases in my name. A loan co-signed under my credit. And then, in the last envelope, a bank statement. A joint savings account opened during our 2nd year of marriage. The account was in both our names. But I hadn't seen it in years, and now I knew why. The funds were emptied right before he filed for divorce. The trail was disguised through a shell company I'd heard about from Ely, the sports fund Clinton used to shuffle money off books. I sat on the cold floor and stared at the pages. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a strategy. He'd been preparing for years. I scanned and backed up everything onto 3 drives, one for my lawyer, one for a backup vault, and one to keep with me. When I locked the unit and walked back to my car, the air didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt sharp, focused, like steel being honed. By afternoon, I was parked outside a nondescript brick building downtown. The nameplate on the door simply read L. Jennings-esque. No firm name, no advertising. Lillian Jennings had been recommended to me years ago by my old mentor, Professor Hale. During a gender discrimination case, she'd fought and won against a medical board. She wasn't flashy, but when she spoke, judges listened. Her office smelled like ink and lemon oil. She looked up over her reading glasses as I stepped in. "Skylar Carter?" "Yes," I said, offering the drive. "This is everything." She took it wordlessly and inserted it into her laptop. For the next 20 minutes, she clicked, scanned, tilted her head, occasionally narrowed her eyes. I waited. Finally, she removed her glasses. "You were set up," she said simply. "But this—" She tapped the screen. "This goes far beyond divorce. This is asset stripping. Intentional. Coordinated." My throat tightened. "Is it criminal?" I asked carefully. She gave me a long look. "Yes. Under multiple statutes." I folded my hands in my lap. My pulse wasn't racing. It was steady. Lillian leaned forward. Her voice was low, but it cut clear. "You have 2 choices," she said. "You can go through the courts, fight for justice. That path is long, public, and brutal. Or—" She studied me for a beat longer. "Or we make them disappear, legally, financially, and reputationally. Brick by brick." I looked at her, and for the first time since this began, I felt no fear, only clarity. I didn't answer her question right away. I just looked at her, this sharp silver-haired attorney whose voice never rose but somehow shook me to my core. "Justice or disappearance?" she'd asked. I exhaled. I want the truth exposed, I said, steady. Let the world see them for who they are. Every last one of them. She nodded like she already knew my answer. The next morning, I was back in her office by 8. The coffee in her waiting room was burnt, the kind that's been sitting too long, but I took a cup anyway. I didn't need caffeine. What I needed was forward motion. We started quietly. No alarms, no threats, just filings, one after another. Fraud, misappropriation of marital funds, undisclosed shared accounts, even tax evasion. Clinton's family had left a paper trail so arrogant, so messy, that it didn't take long for her paralegal to start highlighting sections and muttering, "Are they serious?" We didn't send anything directly to Clinton yet. Instead, a letter went out to his firm. It was written in the most neutral tone imaginable, packaged like a routine title inquiry. But inside, stapled neatly, was a copy of our marriage deed. Signed, notarized, and time-stamped, contradicting what his firm had filed during the divorce. That afternoon, while I sat in a quiet corner of the city library reviewing scanned bank statements, his assistant read it aloud over lunch. I didn't see it happen. But later, one of her colleagues forwarded me the video from the security cam inside the cafe. There was Clinton, smug in his suit, sipping iced tea while the assistant read the letter aloud, her voice faltering halfway through. You never disclosed this, she stammered. This shows joint ownership and, Clinton, the divorce decree. He reached for the letter, and when he saw the attachment, he froze. It was like watching someone realize too late that the door they'd just slammed was locked from the inside. I didn't need to be there. The paper had already spoken. That night, while organizing scanned receipts on my laptop, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, it rang again. Same number. I answered this time. "Skylar?" The voice was tentative, feminine, and unexpectedly familiar. "Speaking." "It's Harper, Clinton's cousin." I sat up straight. Harper always struck me as the quiet type at family gatherings, hovering near the buffet, polite, a little stiff. She'd never gotten involved, until now. "I know I shouldn't be calling," she began, "but I just can't carry it anymore. The guilt." I didn't speak. I let her fill the silence. "They planned it," she whispered. "His mom, Uncle Jeff, even the older brother, Seth. After the lottery win, they had this meeting, said it was time to cut you out cleanly. They had a lawyer on standby. They even ran a mock session so Clinton would know what to say during mediation. They told him if he played it right, the court would fast-track everything. Said if he ditched the dead weight, they'd back him in his next campaign. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Harper wasn't done. "I found this," she added, her voice shaky. "It's a voicemail. From his mother, the morning after the lottery hit the papers." She forwarded the audio. I played it twice, sitting on the floor in silence. His mother's voice came through crisp, cold. "Make sure she's out by Friday. She's not one of us anymore." Not one of us. Like I was an object they'd grown tired of. I sent the file to my lawyer that night. The next morning, I met her in the same office. I brought the new documentation, the audio file, and a folder of bank activity showing a sudden withdrawal pattern tied to Clinton's shell company 2 weeks before the divorce papers were filed. She reviewed everything with that same terrifying calm. "They didn't just divorce you," she said finally. "They engineered your removal like a hostile corporate acquisition." I blinked. She leaned back in her chair and steepled her fingers. "We're not just dealing with fraud anymore. This is orchestrated asset stripping, defamation, emotional sabotage, all traceable and provable." I stayed quiet. Then she looked me dead in the eye. "We can go 2 ways. 1, we pursue this quietly through federal and state filings. 2, we make it public." "You mean the press?" She nodded. "I know a few editors who care about women's financial rights. You're not the only one this has happened to, Skylar, but you might be the first who documented it well enough to make it undeniable." I thought of Clinton's smug grin, his mother's sneering eyes. I thought of how easily they discarded me, like I was just a loose end, like I never mattered. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't shed a tear. I looked her right back in the eye. Let's burn the house they built. When I left her office that afternoon, the sky was overcast. The wind had picked up, but my step didn't falter. My heels hit the pavement like punctuation, and in my purse, I carried the first draft of a press statement. I had one last thing to do before I lit the first match. I stood in front of that house one last time, not to plead, not to cry, just to look it in the face before I burned it all down, metaphorically, of course. My fingers brushed the thick envelope in my coat pocket. Inside, a legal injunction and every piece of evidence I'd held close for weeks. Clinton didn't know it yet, but today was the beginning of his unraveling. The porch lights were on. Mid-morning sun filtered through the sycamore tree, casting jagged shadows across the driveway. I rang the bell and waited. A few seconds later, the door creaked open. Clinton answered, wearing sweatpants and that same smug expression he wore the night he locked me out. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut in. "This is for you." I handed him the sealed envelope. "What's this?" he scoffed. "Another one of your games?" "No," I said calmly. "This one's real. It's from the state court. Your account's tied to the winnings? Frozen, starting today." His smile faltered. He tore open the envelope like it might bite. When his eyes hit the word injunction, his posture shifted. I watched the gears spin in his head, confusion turning to concern, concern turning to disbelief. "You can't do this," he muttered. "This is harassment." "I didn't do anything," I replied. "Your signature did." Before he could say another word, his mother, Delia, appeared at the door behind him, holding a mug like it was a trophy. Her voice dripped with disdain. "Well, well, the charity case returns." I didn't flinch. "Relax, Delia. I didn't come to stay. I came to shut the door. For good." I turned to leave. My heels clicked once against the porch step, then again. And that's when I heard the screech of tires. A white van pulled up to the curb. Then a second car. Reporters jumped out with cameras already rolling. I kept walking, steady, as flashbulbs lit the sidewalk like fireworks. "Ma'am, is it true you were cheated out of your share of the lottery? Did Clinton Carter falsify documents during the divorce? Is it true his law firm is under investigation?" I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. I let them ask. Let their curiosity fester. I slid into the waiting rideshare and didn't look back. By the time I got home, my phone had already started buzzing. That night, my inbox exploded. News alerts, hashtags, video clips of Clinton stammering behind his front gate. I watched it all unfold from my kitchen table with a glass of water in hand and a steady heart. One headline stood out: "Lottery love scandal? Husband accused of hiding assets in 9-Mabbler divorce debacle." Another: "Justice served cold." Comments poured in. Strangers from across the country chimed in. "How do you win millions and still screw over the woman who built your life with you?" Disgusting. Hope she takes everything. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. But the silence inside me had shifted. I could breathe deeper. I no longer needed to convince anyone. The truth was starting to speak for itself. And then came twist 12. That morning, I sent the voice clip anonymously to 3 media contacts, ones I trusted to verify before publishing. It was short, 22 seconds, grainy quality, but clear enough. Delia's voice. "Make sure she's out by Friday. She's not one of us anymore." Then a giggle. The kind of laugh you hear when someone thinks they've won. I didn't add context. I didn't need to. By noon, the video had been reposted over 400,000 times. Clinton's name was trending. People were dissecting every detail. His office issued a vague statement: "We have placed Mr. Carter on administrative leave pending internal review." Delia shut down her social media. Clinton's brother unfriended half the extended family. The group that had once stood united against me was now imploding publicly. It was poetic. But then came the call. Late evening. My phone lit up. Clinton. I almost didn't answer. But then I did. "Skylar." His voice cracked. I didn't respond. I need to know. Did you really mean to destroy all of us?" I exhaled slowly. Not angry, just clear. No, you did that part yourself. Silence. Then I ended the call. I set the phone down on the nightstand and slipped beneath the covers. No nightmares came that night, no tossing, no waking up startled, just sleep. Because for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was running, or hiding, or apologizing, and in that silence, I knew the next move had to be the one they never saw coming. So, I made it. Quietly. Carefully. I didn't yell or send another warning. I simply showed up, on time, in person, and with every truth they thought I'd never dare bring to light. It was early when I arrived at the courthouse. The sun hadn't fully broken through the morning haze, but the air buzzed with tension, like the world knew something was about to unfold. I wore a navy blue blouse tucked into gray slacks, simple, dignified, not flashy. My hair was pulled back, no makeup except for a little under-eye concealer and lip balm. I wanted to be seen for exactly what I was, a woman who'd had enough. As I stepped through the front doors, I saw them, Clinton and his lawyer standing by the elevators mid-conversation. He looked up and saw me, and for a moment the smugness flickered. He straightened his blazer, but his eyes darted. Delia wasn't far behind him, carrying a designer handbag that probably cost more than my car. She narrowed her eyes like I didn't belong here. But I kept walking. The courtroom was already half full, press in the back rows, local reporters with notepads, a couple of camera crews stationed outside. A few neighbors were there too, pretending not to stare. I saw Mrs. Henderson from next door, whispering behind her palm to someone beside her. We sat across the aisle from each other. Clinton's attorney, a man with sharp cheekbones and a voice meant for radio, stood first. He spoke about contributions and marital duties, painting me as a homemaker who, while noble in intention, had no legal stake in the windfall. She did not work. She did not invest. She was not present during Mr. Carter's years of business development. He even glanced back toward the crowd for emphasis. She was, respectfully, a housewife. I didn't flinch. I didn't interrupt. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. Then my name was called. I stood, walked calmly to the bench, and opened the slim black portfolio I'd carried in with me. I pulled out 2 envelopes. Both were sealed, signed across the back. I handed them to the judge without a word, then stepped aside. The judge took his time, opening the first file and scanning the contents. He passed it to the clerk, who handed copies to both legal teams. "These are time-stamped financial records," the judge said aloud, indicating Mrs. Carter paid down Mr. Carter's early business loans. Several credit accounts are in her name alone. Is this correct, counsel? Clinton's lawyer blinked, scrambled for words. "And this," the judge lifted a second sheet, "appears to be a notarized agreement, predating the divorce proceedings, promising that any lottery winnings would be split equally between the 2 parties. Both signatures are present." I heard the murmurs ripple behind me. Clinton shifted in his seat. Delia looked like someone had slapped her. "Your Honor," Clinton's attorney tried, "we request a recess to—" "Request denied," the judge replied without missing a beat. "Proceed." I nodded slightly and reached into my file once more. "There's one more thing." This time, it was a photo, color-printed, time-stamped, from the gas station's security camera. The clerk handed it over, and the judge lifted it toward the light. The image showed Clinton at the counter, holding the winning ticket, and right beside him, me. I was handing him the pen. We both had our hands on the counter. I remembered that moment. We had joked about buying gum. He had said, "You sign too, for luck." No one laughed now. The judge raised an eyebrow. "So you were present during the purchase?" "Yes, Your Honor, and I signed the back of the ticket. There's another copy on file with the lottery office. It should show both signatures." Clinton's face drained, but it wasn't over. The judge glanced at the final document. "We've also received an email, submitted this morning by an anonymous party, allegedly from Delia Carter to Mr. Carter. Shall I read it into the record?" The courtroom leaned in. The judge cleared his throat. You need to push the papers through before the witch catches on. If you wait too long, she'll demand her share, and we'll be stuck splitting what should be ours. This is our shot, Clinton. You know I didn't raise you to be soft. Take the win and leave her behind. Signed, Delia. There was a gasp somewhere near the press bench. Clinton covered his face with his hand. I stood still. The judge sat back. Given this evidence, I am granting a temporary injunction. Half of the lottery funds are to be frozen immediately. Mrs. Carter will have provisional access to 50% of all winnings until a formal trial date is set. Further, we will investigate potential fraud relating to the divorce timeline. Court is adjourned. He banged the gavel. The noise of the courtroom rose in volume, reporters scribbling, people standing up to whisper. Clinton's lawyer leaned over him, but Clinton looked stunned. Delia, for the first time, had nothing to say. I turned to walk out. As I passed, I felt a hand graze my arm. Clinton, his voice cracked, please, don't destroy me. I paused, looked at him, but I didn't answer. I simply walked out the door, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel small. I didn't stop walking. Clinton's voice followed me down the courthouse steps like a ghost begging not to be forgotten. Please don't destroy me, he'd said. Not, I'm sorry. Not, what have I done? Just that. And somehow, that told me everything I still needed to know. The car was waiting at the curb. I didn't speak to the driver, just nodded and sat back. The courthouse was behind me now, but I knew my final move wasn't over yet. It had to be quiet, dignified, like the silence right before a page turns, and the story shifts for good. By the time I reached his office later that week, I knew exactly what I wanted to say, but I didn't say it out loud. Words I'd learned could be twisted, ignored, mocked, so I left a letter instead, not a printed one. I wrote it by hand, carefully, no crossed out lines, no ranting, just truth, steady and clean. His assistant looked at me like she recognized me from the news but wasn't sure what to do. I simply handed her the envelope, addressed in blue ink with his name and nothing else. It was sealed with a small wax stamp, no initials, just a tiny flame emblem pressed into the red wax. Please make sure he gets this directly, I said. She nodded, speechless. Inside that envelope was his wedding band, the one he stopped wearing long before he admitted why. Wrapped beside it was my letter. I didn't accuse. I didn't scream. I told the story the way I remembered it. How we built from nothing. How I stood in when the bank wouldn't. How I smiled through unpaid months and skipped birthdays so he could chase dreams. I wrote how love doesn't die with betrayal. It simply becomes something else. Quieter, sharper. And then, near the bottom, I tucked in a photo. It was printed on matte paper, old-fashioned, like something you'd send to family. In it, I stood in front of a white lighthouse on a rocky coast. Wind in my hair, no makeup, no pretense, just me, alone, at peace. Underneath it, I'd written, I bought it back, not for us, for me. This is where I'm starting over. That lighthouse had once been our favorite place, where he proposed, where we dreamed, and where, years later, I stood again, this time without him. I didn't wait for a response. I never planned to. Some letters are meant to be read in silence. A few days later, word began to spread. Clinton's family, who once called me a burden with a smile, started turning on each other. Delia was subpoenaed after someone leaked the email she'd written, the one where she urged him to act fast, before the witch catches on. She tried to deny it, claimed it was doctored, but the server logs didn't lie, neither did the timestamps. His mother stopped showing up to public events. His father, always loud about protecting the family name, quietly listed their home for sale. Frozen assets have a way of turning loyal tongues bitter. Their perfect life was unraveling, one courtroom motion at a time. And me? I made my moves in silence. I contacted every bank, every joint account, every contract, removed my name cleanly, no drama, no threats, just paperwork and patience. When the first check cleared, I did something no one expected. I gave half away. Not to friends, not to a cause with my name on it. I funneled it quietly through a trust to women's shelters, specifically the ones that helped women abandoned during divorce or financially manipulated into silence. I didn't want credit, I wanted a ripple. Then I packed what I had left, just the essentials, and moved. The lighthouse wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. Perched on the edge of a cliff in Maine, it looked out over a stretch of sea that never stopped moving. The first night I spent there, I didn't sleep much. I didn't cry either. I listened to the waves. I kept things simple. A warm kettle, a wooden desk by the window, a small couch I picked out secondhand. But what I built from there would stretch farther than any of them knew. I founded something. Quietly. Under a different name. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about the women like me. Women who'd been told to sit down and be grateful. Women who signed their names to someone else's dream and were erased the moment the dream became real. The foundation didn't make headlines. That's how I wanted it. We worked small, local, one town at a time, one broken woman at a time. No fame, just healing. One morning, weeks later, I heard a soft knock at the door. The sea was loud behind it. The wind carried a kind of ache I knew too well. I opened it to find a girl, not more than 20, maybe younger. Her hoodie was soaked through. Her eyes darted like a bird's. She didn't ask for anything, didn't say a word. I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. "You're safe here." She looked at me like she couldn't believe it. I didn't ask who hurt her or what she left behind. I just brought her a towel and a bowl of soup. The rest could wait. As I sat with her, I looked out through the window at the sea. They took my home. I built a new one. They tried to erase me. I lit a fire instead. And maybe, just maybe, that's how you rise. From ashes and a locked door.